Hello everyone, Flexible here and hi, how's it going? It's been a while, yeah? But I am officially back. I didn't want to just upload a video saying I returned. I wanted to do a video proving I returned. And that is this video. And my return isn't the only surprise I have. Check it. Ta-da! Welcome to the new and improved Flexible Bleach! Art done by the incredible Fergalaz, and I hope I pronounced his name right. A link to his Fiverr account will be in the description below. Check him out if you want sick art like this. Now then, with an original model instead of a stolen PMD PNG, and with the right equipment and programs in my arsenal, I'm motivated to finally do what I want to do. And that is content creation. For today, I'll be starting my review series. And what better way for a Pokemon to start their review series than with a terrible review of a terrible game? This review will be focused on the RPGs Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue for the Game Boy. These are the very first installments in the series and the first generation of Pokemon media. Now, before I begin, let me briefly explain the format for my reviews. I'll split my opinions into 3 different categories. Narrative, which is the story, characters, themes, all the literary elements you can find in a game. Gameplay, which is the direct interaction between player and game. And presentation, the artistic side of the game. Graphics, music, art style, animation, these things. Sometimes the sections may overlap and sometimes it won't be in this order, but I'll do my best. Now then, let's begin. When you hit New Game, you are greeted by Professor Oak, who introduces you to the world of Pokemon. According to him, Pokemon are creatures, whatever that means. Let's just say they're magic animals, it makes more sense. And some people fight alongside these magic animals in Pokemon battles as Pokemon trainers. So basically, the basis of these games are anime dogfighting. You then name yourself and your rival, and are dropped into the fictitious Kanto region in the world of Pokemon to do... From the start, we already have my first criticism. The game doesn't tell you what you're doing. Now, this isn't a bad thing, if the game design complements this, but spoiler alert, it doesn't. These games don't have a story. They are an adventure, and the end goal is to defeat the Pokemon League. But the game doesn't tell you this. If you're lucky, it might hint that this is what you have to do, but only if you explore a certain area at a certain point in your journey. The only objective given is by Professor Oak, and that is to complete the Pokédex. And you can't. Unless you have both games, 2 Game Boys, and a link cable, you ain't catching them all. So no story, and the only goal presented to you is something you can't achieve through normal means. The story section will be very short. The characters in this world can hardly be called characters. Calling any of them one-dimensional would be an insult to one-dimensional characters, like your rival. The only character with character is your rival, and that is still a generous statement. He's a childhood bully because childhood bully. He has a dream to be the very best because why not? And at the very end of the game, he receives a small amount of character development that isn't paid off till the next game. It's clear that Pokemon Red and Blue don't care about their narrative, so neither will I. The goal, which the game doesn't tell you, is to defeat the Pokemon League. The Pokemon League is comprised of the Elite Four and the Champion, which are the strongest Pokemon trainers in the region. To earn the right to challenge the Pokemon League, you must first defeat the 8 gym leaders spread throughout the region. At the start of your journey, you are handed a single Pokemon. Then after a short quest, you are given Pokeballs to capture, or catch, more Pokemon. Here is where the game truly begins. This journey takes place in the fictitious Kanto region, based on the real-life Kanto region in Japan, but no one cares about that. You explore this region, catching new wild Pokemon you find, and battling other Pokemon trainers you see. You find wild Pokemon by walking in patches of grass, on water or fishing, or in caves. You fight them to weaken them, and throw a Pokeball at them, and pray that it works because catching isn't guaranteed. You have a certain percentage chance of capturing wild Pokemon, and this percentage is affected by various things, like weakening it or putting it to sleep. or even using a better ball. This leads me into my second issue. The game literally does not work as advertised. And don't try to deflect by saying, to be fair, it's an old... Shut up. No amount of copium will change the bad programming. I would try to explain, but I'm a little too stupid for that. Instead, I'll link to this amazing video that explains it better than I ever could. Link in the description. The TLDR is, certain catching mechanics simply don't work, and certain things the game tells you are outright lies. To be fair, I am being a little extreme. You can still catch Pokemon perfectly fine, and this specific problem isn't noticeable to the average person. But it does make the experience less enjoyable, and because of this, I have to bring it up. Outside of catching Pokemon, you have a giant world to explore. In standard RPG fashion, progression is linear. Now, the means of halting and continuing progression is a bit wonky. It's not always clear where to go first, and this is a problem because this is an RPG. The Pokemon have levels and stats and stuff. Because it's not clear what events go in what order, you can end up triggering an event much later than you should, making things too easy. Or sometimes you can get lost and not know how to proceed. And the game's internal logic for conveying information is terrible, so it's very possible to simply get stuck and not know how to proceed. This flaw is similar to the first one. The game is really bad at conveying information. Progress isn't impossible without a guide, but if you're stupid like me, you will get stuck. And that is just not fun, because again, the game is not designed around it. To be positive, the world is littered with secrets like rare items and rare Pokemon, so exploring is fun. And around the end of the game, they start introducing cute, simple puzzles to break up the gameplay. But these puzzles take place in areas where you can encounter wild Pokemon, and encountering a wild Pokemon is a random % chance, so it can be slightly annoying to constantly get disrupted while trying to solve a puzzle. But you can eliminate wild encounters with certain items, so this game design is fine. One more point before moving on to combat. One way these games gate progress, introduce difficulty, create puzzles, and hide secrets is through HMs. HMs are one of the most contentious mechanics in Pokemon games. This alone can be a 10-minute video. To make a very long story short, I am in team screw HMs. They are bad game design. Maybe I'll make a whole video on them next time. Anyway, on to the big one, the point. This is where the real fun begins. Pokemon is a turn-based JRPG. To initiate combat, fight a wild Pokemon or walk into a Pokemon trainer's range of sight. Pokemon trainers are littered throughout the world, and many of them are unavoidable, so battle is inevitable. You and your opponent can each hold up to 6 Pokemon. Here's how battles work. You have 3 options. Fight, switch Pokemon, use an item. During wild Pokemon encounters, you gain a 4th option. Flee, where you run away like a coward. To fight in these games, you choose a Pokemon move and use it on your opponent. Both you and your opponent take your turn at the same time. The one who is faster goes first. Pokemon moves can do a large variety of things. You can attack, inflict a status effect, buff yourself, debuff the opponent, the list goes on. Damage is calculated by the stats of your Pokemon. And your stats are as follows. Attack, used for physical attacks. Defense, how much you resist physical attacks. Health, the amount of damage you can take. Speed, used to determine who goes first. And Special, which calculates your power and resistance to special attacks. Pokemon gain experience through battling, and then can gain levels to raise these stats. The maximum level is 100. Also, Pokemon moves have power points, which say how many times that move can be used. Sounds simple enough, right? The depth and complexity comes from the various types in the game. Pokemon and their Pokemon moves have types. These types affect how much damage you deal with Pokemon moves. For example, a Fire-type move hitting a Grass-type Pokemon would deal double damage. A Fire-type move hitting a Water-type Pokemon would deal half damage. And a Fire-type move hitting a Normal-type Pokemon would deal normal damage. These strengths and weaknesses exist for every type, and are different for every type. There are 15 total types. Something I forgot to note, Pokemon moves also have their own power and accuracy. The power of the Pokemon move is another factor in dealing damage. As you can see, each individual system is easy to understand, and yet they all perfectly blend together to create one of the most deep and complex battle systems out there. For a casual, you can just catch cute Pokemon or powerful Pokemon, spam strong moves, and cut through all the enemies. At the start, anyway. And for people who like to think, the systems blend beautifully to create the most amazing combat system that is still actively played in professional competitions to this day. But I'm getting off track. Point is, combat is fun and good. There's only two real problems with the combat. One, it sometimes doesn't work the way it should. Terrible programming back at it. I'll spare you the details and link this video detailing a lot of the bugs and glitches of these games. And two, these games specifically are wildly unbalanced. Your enjoyment will be kinda random, based on how lucky you can get with strong Pokemon and strong moves. I specify enjoyment and not difficulty here, because these games are made to be beginner friendly. So even the dumbest person can just barely win against a tough foe on the first try. And this is done through the introduction of items. This is the third option available to you. In a Pokemon battle, you can choose to use an item, which takes priority over everything else. Items can have a plethora of effects. You can fully heal Pokemon, remove status effects, buff your Pokemon stats, revive Pokemon that are defeated, and restore the PP of Pokemon moves. And you can get a lot of these items, and use them as many times as you want. The only limit is one item per turn, and that uses up your turn. Your opponent sometimes, maybe, gets one item or two, but this is usually reserved for boss fights, which are just stronger, specific trainers. As you can see, this kinda breaks the game in half. It may be unbalanced, but hey, your opponent can exploit that if they can't hurt you. As someone who is not qualified at all to talk about this, I am the most qualified to talk about this. And my opinion is this: these games have aged poorly. The graphics are passable, I suppose. The games are old and use the old school pixel art graphic. And it's not terrible. I can't call it good, but it isn't bad either. It's passable, it'd be a D in school. The character designs are mostly fine too. I don't know what happened to Professor Oak though, he looks terrible. If that was the point, then mission failed successfully? Anyway, when I say it has aged poorly, I'm mostly referring to the Pokemon sprites. Popular ones to point out are ones like Mankey and Golbat, but even Venusaur and Mewtwo look bad. Pokemon sprites in general are bad in these games. Which is funny because the designs themselves aren't terrible. They just look bad because of terrible sprite work. My last point is the music. These are 8-bit games with an 8-bit soundtrack, and I had to look that up. None of the soundtracks in this game are bad, but they are all definitely held back by being 8-bit. They sound hollow, empty, incomplete, I guess? Something is missing, and whatever it is, they added it in the newer renditions of these tracks. So, to no one's surprise, I think these games are a product of their time. They are full of flaws and problems. I can't call these good video games, and I can't recommend them either. If you're new to Pokemon and want to start at Generation 1, play Pokemon Fire Red or Leaf Green, the remakes of these games. Don't play these. Now then, time to do the one thing a reviewer never should. Give it a review score! Now listen, I know how flawed a review score is. But it's not for you, it's for me. I'll give it a number from 1 to 10, and then attach a word to it. This will help me remember my feelings and thoughts on it. And I like numbers anyway, so I'm doing it. I give Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue for the Game Boy a 3 out of 10. I think they are bad games. Now to let the chaos ensue. But what did you think? Do you agree with my opinions? Disagree? What about the video? Is it good? Bad? Leave a comment down below detailing any thoughts and opinions you have. While you're down there, how about liking and subscribing as well? I will upload more so you have reason to. And with that, the video is finished. So thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time, and remember to stay flexible.